I never thought I'd be sitting here telling this story. 3 years ago, I was scrubbing floors in my son's guest bathroom, trying not to let the tears fall as I overheard him and his wife discussing how to handle the situation with me. The situation being my stage 2 breast cancer diagnosis and the inconvenience it caused them. Today, I'm watching the sunset from my beachfront property in Cannon Beach, sipping a glass of pinot noir that costs more than what Ryan used to grudgingly give me for monthly groceries. Life has a way of balancing the scales when you least expect it. Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Valerie Winters. For 35 years, I poured my heart and soul into nursing, spending the last 20 as a hospice nurse. There's something profound about being with people during their final moments. It teaches you about what truly matters in life. I held countless hands as they slipped away, reassured family members, and witnessed both beautiful goodbyes and painful regrets. What I never expected was that my own family would deliver one of the most painful goodbyes of all. Ryan came into my life when he was just 4 years old. His father, Mark, and I had been married only 2 years when Mark's brother and sister-in-law died in a car accident. Without hesitation, we took Ryan in. Mark struggled with the sudden responsibility, but I fell in love with that little boy instantly. His curious blue eyes, the way he'd hide behind my legs when meeting strangers, how he'd crawl into our bed during thunderstorms. 3 years after Ryan came to live with us, Mark left. "This isn't what I signed up for," he said, suitcase already packed by the door. "I never wanted to be a father." He gave me a choice: give Ryan up for adoption or raise him alone. It wasn't a choice at all. I let Mark walk away and dedicated myself to giving Ryan everything he needed. I worked double shifts, sometimes 3 jobs at once. I sewed Ryan's Halloween costumes by hand, tutored him through algebra at the kitchen table until midnight, cheered until my voice gave out at his soccer games. When he got into Portland State University, I took out a second mortgage on our modest home to help cover what his scholarships didn't. "When I make it big, Mom, I'll pay you back for everything," he promised the day he graduated, hugging me tight as I blinked back proud tears. Ryan did make it big, at least by our family's standards. He climbed quickly through the ranks at a prestigious marketing firm, married Megan, a perfectly polished interior designer from a good family, and bought a modern townhouse in the Pearl District. Meanwhile, I continued my hospice work, finding meaning in the comfort I could provide to patients and their families. One of those patients changed my life in ways I could never have imagined. William Harrison was an investment banker who had no family left when pancreatic cancer brought him to our hospice center. For 8 months, I was his primary nurse. We'd talk for hours about books, philosophy, his travels around the world. He told me once, "Valerie, you've given me something my money never could, dignity in my darkest hours." The day before he passed, William asked to speak with me privately. "I've watched how hard you work, how much you care, and how little you've been given in return," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've made arrangements. My attorney will contact you." I thought perhaps he'd left me a small keepsake, his collection of first edition books perhaps. I had no idea what was really coming. William passed peacefully that night, my hand in his. 2 weeks later, his attorney called me into his office. There, he explained that William had established a trust in my name, with nearly $5 million in assets, primarily held in a private Swiss bank account. I nearly collapsed in the leather chair across from his desk. "This can't be right," I protested. "We were just friends. I was his nurse." The attorney smiled gently. "Mr. Harrison had no heirs, Ms. Winters. He said you showed him more kindness in 8 months than most people had shown him in a lifetime. He wanted you to finally have the peace you've given to others." I decided to keep the inheritance private, at least temporarily. I needed time to process this extraordinary turn of events, to make thoughtful decisions rather than hasty ones. I continued working, telling no one about my sudden wealth, not even Ryan. I planned to surprise him once I'd retired, perhaps help him and Megan buy their dream house or set up college funds for the grandchildren they were planning to have. That was my plan. But life, as I'd learned soon enough, had other ideas entirely. The mammogram was supposed to be routine, just another item to check off my to-do list between shifts. When the radiologist asked me to wait for additional images, a knot formed in my stomach. 2 biopsies and 1 sleepless week later, my doctor confirmed what I'd already begun to fear: stage 2 breast cancer. "It's treatable," Dr. Chen assured me, her voice steady and confident. "The 5-year survival rate is high, especially with your overall good health. But Valerie, the treatment will be intense. You'll need surgery followed by chemotherapy. You won't be able to work during this time." After 35 years of caring for others, I finally had to focus on myself. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot, hands trembling against the steering wheel, and made the difficult call to the hospice center to request medical leave. Then I called Ryan. "Mom, is everything okay?" His voice sounded distracted, office noise buzzing in the background. "Ryan, honey, I need to tell you something important. Could you come over tonight? Or I could come to you." My voice caught, betraying the calm I was trying to maintain. There was a pause, the click of a door closing. "What's going on? Just tell me now." I took a deep breath. "I've been diagnosed with breast cancer, stage 2. I'm going to need surgery and chemotherapy." Another pause, longer this time. "Cancer? Are you serious? God, Mom." His voice lowered. "What about work? Your health insurance?" "I have medical leave and my insurance should cover most of it, but..." I hesitated. "I won't be able to work during treatment. I might need some help." "Help? What kind of help?" His tone had shifted, an edge creeping in. "Maybe just a place to stay during the worst of the treatment. The stairs in my apartment will be hard after surgery, and there might be days when I can't take care of myself." Ryan cleared his throat. "Look, let me talk to Megan. Our place is small, and she's been redecorating the guest room. Let me call." "You back, okay?" I waited 3 days for that call back. When it finally came, Ryan suggested we meet for coffee downtown. "Not at the house," he clarified. "Megan's got clients coming by." We met at a sterile chain coffee shop, nothing like the cozy independent cafes Portland was known for. Ryan was already seated when I arrived, checking his watch, a half-empty cup in front of him. "I can't stay long," he said as I sat down. "Quarterly review meeting in an hour." I nodded, trying to ignore the growing hollowness in my chest that had nothing to do with cancer. "I understand. Have you and Megan talked about my situation?" Ryan sighed, running a hand through his carefully styled hair. "Mom, we've talked it through, and it's just not going to work having you stay with us. Megan's business is taking off. We're trying to start a family, and honestly, we're not equipped to be caregivers." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "I wouldn't need much," I said quietly. "Just a room, maybe some help with meals on the bad days." "That's just it. We don't know how many bad days there'll be. Mom, you've been in healthcare. You know how cancer treatments go. What if it's worse than you expect? What if it's months of care? We can't commit to that." I felt my face grow hot, embarrassment and hurt mingling with disbelief. "I took care of you for 18 years by myself, Ryan. I worked 3 jobs to put you through college." His expression hardened. "And I've always been grateful. But that was your choice. You chose to be a parent. Megan and I didn't choose this." The words hit me like physical blows. I sat back, suddenly aware of the curious glances from nearby tables. "We've come up with a solution," Ryan continued, his tone shifting to something artificially bright. "Diane knows the director at Evergreen Assisted Living. They have a medical wing for people who need temporary care during illness. We can get you in there next week." "A nursing home?" My voice was barely audible. "You want to put me in a nursing home at 60? Ryan checked his watch again. "It's a care facility, Mom. They have professionals. It's better than you being alone in your apartment." "And how am I supposed to afford this care facility?" I asked, knowing full well that such places cost thousands per month. "You have savings, right? And your pension will start soon. It's not like you have many expenses. Plus, they have a work exchange program. If you help out when you're feeling better, light meal prep, greeting visitors, that kind of thing, they'll reduce your fees." I stared at my son, this stranger with Ryan's face who was suggesting I scrub floors and serve food to pay for my own cancer care. In that moment, something inside me, something that had bent and bent and bent for decades, finally broke. "No," I said firmly. Ryan blinked. "No? Mom, be realistic. What's your alternative?" "I'll figure something out. I always have." I stood up, gathering my purse. "Mom, sit down, don't be dramatic." Ryan's voice had an edge of panic now, heads turning in our direction. "I'm not being dramatic, Ryan. I'm declining your generous offer to warehouse your sick mother so she doesn't inconvenience your life." The words tasted bitter on my tongue. "That's not fair," he hissed. "We're trying to help within our limitations. What do you expect us to do?" I leaned down, my hands flat on the table. I expected my son to treat me with the same care and compassion I've shown to perfect strangers for 35 years. I expected the boy who promised to pay me back for everything, to remember what everything actually entailed. I straightened up. My mistake. As I turned to leave, Ryan called, "After me, so what now? Where will you go?" I didn't turn around. "Don't worry about it. I release you from responsibility." That night, I sat alone in my small apartment, staring at my phone. After 3 glasses of wine, I finally made the call I'd been avoiding. William Harrison's attorney picked up on the second ring. "Mr. Davidson, it's Valerie Winters. I'd like to access the trust funds now." The next morning, with an appointment scheduled at Zurich Private Bank's Portland branch, I faced my apartment. With new eyes, the faded couch where I'd fallen asleep after countless night shifts, the dining table where I'd helped Ryan with his homework, the cramped kitchen where I'd stretched every dollar into nourishing meals. For decades, this place had been both refuge and prison, a testament to what I could provide on a nurse's salary. Now it felt like a relic from another life. I packed 2 suitcases with essentials, tucked my medical documents into a folder, and left the keys on the counter. By noon, I had checked into the Westmore Hotel, Portland's premier luxury accommodation. The concierge raised an eyebrow at my modest clothing and worn luggage, but snapped to attention when the bank called down to confirm my VIP status. My suite overlooked the Willamette River, the cityscape beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows looking like a miniature wonderland. I sank into the plush king-sized bed and let out a half-laugh, half-sob. 30 years as a nurse, holding people, through their final moments, and I'd never once experienced this level of comfort myself. At the bank, I was ushered into a private conference room. Ms. Hadley, a sleek woman in her 40s with an impeccable suit and discreet jewelry, efficiently walked me through the details of my account. "Mr. Harrison was quite specific about the structure," she explained. "The funds were transferred to Switzerland for privacy and tax advantages, but you have complete access through our branch network or secure digital banking. We've prepared a portfolio overview for you." She slid a leather folder across the polished table. Inside, meticulously organized documents detailed my new reality: $6, $5 million in diversified investments, generating approximately $260,000 annually without touching the principal. This is really mine? I whispered, fingers trembling as I turned the pages. Ms. Hadley's professional demeanor softened slightly. Entirely yours, Ms. Winters. Mr. Harrison wanted you to be secure for the rest of your life. He spoke very highly of your compassion during his final months. I swallowed hard. I need to access some funds immediately. I've been diagnosed with cancer, and I'll require treatment. If Ms. Hadley was surprised, she didn't show it. I'm very sorry to hear that. We can absolutely arrange for immediate liquidity. Will you be staying in Portland for your treatment? Yes, but I'll need new accommodations. Something with accessibility features, ideally. Of course, our private client services can assist with real estate acquisitions or luxury rentals. Many of our clients find that helpful when relocating. By the end of that meeting, I had a new platinum card in my wallet, access to a team of concierge services, and an appointment with a real estate specialist the following day. As I stepped out of the bank's hushed marble lobby into the bright afternoon sunlight, a strange lightness filled me. Not happiness exactly, but a sudden absence of the financial weight I'd carried my entire adult life. For the first time since my diagnosis, I felt something close to hope. My first call was to Dr. Chen's office to confirm I would proceed with treatment as planned, but with a change of contact information. My second call was to my landlord, informing him I would not be renewing my lease. I did not call Ryan. 2 days later, as I recovered from my initial surgery in a private hospital suite filled with flowers I'd sent myself, my phone pinged with a text. Mom, checking on you. Haven't heard from you since coffee. Did you arrange something with Evergreen? Let me know if you need me to call them. No inquiry about my well-being, no offer of help. Just checking to be sure I'd followed through on tucking myself away where I wouldn't disturb his life. I set the phone down without responding. Later that evening, while a private nurse adjusted my medication, another text arrived. Mom, seriously, answer your phone. Your landlord says you moved out? Where are you staying? This isn't responsible behavior with your health situation. I almost laughed out loud. Responsible behavior? Like abandoning your mother after her cancer diagnosis. Was responsible? Again, I didn't respond. It was 3 days before Ryan showed up at the hospital, his face a mask of confusion and irritation. By then, I had already been moved to a deluxe recovery suite reserved for VIP patients. Mrs. Winters? The nurse poked her head in. Your son is here to see you. Should I send him in? I took a deep breath, adjusting my silk robe over my hospital gown. Yes, please. Ryan stepped into the room and froze, taking in the spacious private suite with its comfortable seating area, enormous flower arrangements, and views of the city. Mom, what is this? I had to practically beg the front desk to tell me where you were. His eyes darted around the room. Is this some kind of special cancer patient accommodation program? I smiled slightly. No, Ryan. I'm paying for this myself. He frowned, moving closer to the bed. That's impossible. This suite must cost thousands per day. For $200, actually. Mom, this isn't funny. You can't afford this. Are you taking out loans? Maxing out credit cards? You're going to bankrupt yourself. I adjusted myself higher against the pillows. I'm not going to bankrupt myself. Please sit down. Ryan perched uneasily on the edge of a plush visitor's chair. What's going on? First you disappear, then I find you in what looks like a presidential suite. Are you having some kind of breakdown? I'm having a breakthrough, actually. I met his eyes steadily. Ryan, there's something I never told you. About a year ago, a patient of mine passed away, a man named William Harrison. He had no family, and we developed a friendship during his time in hospice care. When he died, he left me his estate. Ryan's face contorted in disbelief. Left you his. What? His house? His entire estate. Approximately $5 million in assets. The color drained from Ryan's face. 6.5 million? And you kept this secret? For a year? His voice rose with each question. While I've been working. Myself to death? While Megan and I have been scrimping to save for a bigger house? I was planning to surprise you, I said quietly. I thought I'd retire, then help you and Megan buy your dream home, set up college funds for my future grandchildren. Then why didn't you? Why are we just hearing about this now? Because when I got sick and needed help, you showed me exactly what I meant to you. The words hung in the air between us, and it turns out I meant very little. Ryan's expression shifted rapidly, shock giving way to calculation. Mom, you've misunderstood everything. We were just concerned about giving you proper care. Of course we would have helped you. By sending me to work off my room and board at Evergreen? I cut in. Please, Ryan, don't insult us both by pretending. He leaned forward, voice softening to the tone he probably used to close business deals. Look, we were stressed. Megan's business, my work pressure. We didn't handle it well. But we're family, Mom. Family sticks together. Exactly. I nodded. Family sticks together, except when one has cancer and becomes inconvenient, apparently. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. What do you want me to say? That I made a mistake? Fine, I made a mistake. But don't punish Megan and me because of one bad moment. This isn't punishment, Ryan. This is consequence. I adjusted my robe, suddenly tired. I think you should go now. I need to rest before my treatment tomorrow. He stood, hovering, uncertainly. So that's it? You're cutting us off because of one mistake? I haven't said anything about cutting anyone off. I simply need to focus on my health right now. Ryan moved toward the door, then paused. Just tell me one thing. Were you ever going to share this money if you hadn't gotten sick? I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for, and saw a stranger looking back at me. I was going to give you everything, Ryan, just like I always have. After he left, I watched the sunset paint Portland's skyline in shades of gold and pink. For the first time in decades, I felt unburdened. Not by the cancer, that weight remained heavy on my shoulders, but by the realization that after a lifetime of giving, I was finally free to choose where my energy, love, and now my resources would go. Tomorrow would bring the harsh reality of chemotherapy, but tonight I allowed myself to dream about what my life could become once I healed, a life that, for once, would be crafted around my own desires. I expected the chemotherapy to be brutal, but nothing prepared me for how it would ravage my body. The nausea came in relentless waves. My hair fell out in clumps across my pillow, and some days even lifting a glass of water required monumental effort. Yet through this physical hell, I discovered an inner fortitude I never knew I possessed, and unexpected allies along the way. Dr. Chen wasn't just my oncologist. She became my friend. She'd stop by after her shifts ended, sometimes just to sit quietly beside me while I dozed. You're not just another patient to me, Valerie, she told me one evening as Portland's rain tapped gently against my window. For years, you've been the nurse everyone wanted when their loved ones were dying. Now it's our turn to be there for you. 3 weeks into my treatment, Ryan and Megan made their first official visit. They arrived with a small orchid and awkward smiles, clearly uncomfortable with the hospital setting despite its luxury accommodations. Megan's eyes widened at the fret linens and designer loungewear laid across my bed. Mom, you look. Ryan trailed off, clearly struggling with the sight of my bald head and hollowed cheeks. Cancer chic, I supplied with a wry smile. All the rage this season. Megan gave a small, nervous laugh. The room is lovely, so spacious. Yes, It helps to have some comfort during this process. I gestured toward the sitting area. Please, make yourselves comfortable. They perched on the edge of the sofa, exchanging glances before Ryan cleared his throat. Mom, we've been talking. Once you're through the worst of this treatment, we'd love for you to come stay with us. We've completely rearranged the guest room. New bed, one of those adjustable mattresses, everything. I studied my son's face. There was no genuine concern. There, no warmth, just calculation. He'd had 3 weeks to process my newfound wealth, and clearly he'd developed a strategy. That's very kind, I replied evenly, but I've already arranged for a place to recover. Oh? Ryan leaned forward. Where? I've purchased a condo in the Waterford building downtown. It's being renovated with accessibility features while I complete my treatment. Megan's eyebrows shot up. The Waterford? Those units start at $2 million. 2.3 actually, but it has lovely views of the river. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Mom, is that really a wise investment? Real estate can be so volatile. My financial advisors seem to think it's sound. They're managing my portfolio quite effectively. Financial advisors, Ryan repeated slowly. Mom, you have to be careful. There are so many people who might try to take advantage of someone in your position, newly wealthy, dealing with illness. You should let me review your arrangements. I almost laughed at the irony. That's thoughtful, Ryan, but the team at my Zurich Private Bank has been extremely professional. Ms. Hadley has decades of experience managing estates much larger than mine. Zurich Private Bank, Megan echoed, sharing another glance with Ryan. Is your money in Switzerland? Some of it. William diversified wisely. Ryan's expression hardened slightly. William, you talk about him like you were close. We were. Not romantically, if that's what you're implying. But we connected deeply during his final months. We shared a love of poetry, old jazz records, and conversations about what gives life meaning. And he just gave you all his money? Megan asked, unable to keep the skepticism from her voice. He had no family, I explained. He told me once that in his entire banking career, he'd accumulated wealth but found little compassion. I showed him kindness when he needed it most. To him, that was worth everything he had. Ryan leaned forward, voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. Mom, have you considered what people might think about this arrangement? An older man leaving millions to his nurse? It could look inappropriate. The insinuation landed like a slap. After everything, he was suggesting I had somehow manipulated a dying man. I felt a surge of heat rising in my chest that had nothing to do with my treatment. What exactly are you implying, Ryan? He backpedaled quickly. Nothing. I'm just saying others might misinterpret. The only person attempting to misinterpret my relationship with William is you, and I find it deeply hurtful. I straightened in my bed. I think it's time for you both to leave. I need to rest before my next treatment. Mom, don't be like this. I'm just looking out for you. No, Ryan. You're looking out for yourself. You always have been. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I couldn't stop them. From the moment I told you about my diagnosis, your concern has been about how it affects you. Not once have you asked how I'm feeling or offered genuine help. Ryan's face flushed. That's not fair. We offered to let you stay with us. After you learned I had millions. Before that, you were perfectly content to ship me off to work as a glorified janitor at Evergreen to pay for my own cancer care. Megan stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. We were trying to find a practical solution for everyone. You're twisting everything. Am I? I looked directly at her. Tell me honestly, Megan, if I didn't have this money, would you have cleared out your home office for me? Would you have taken time off work to drive me to chemotherapy? Would you have held my Hair back while I vomited from the treatments. Her silence was answer enough. Ryan stood beside his wife, his expression a mix of anger and calculation. You know what? I don't have to sit here and be accused like this. We came to make amends, to offer help. No, you came to secure your position in my will. Let's not pretend otherwise. The words hung in the air between us. Ryan's face went completely still, then cold. Is that what you think of me? That I only care about your money? Your actions have spoken volumes, Ryan. Far louder than your words. He grabbed Megan's hand. Let's go. She's clearly not in a rational state right now. As they moved toward the door, I called after them. Ryan, there's something you should know. He paused, turning slightly. I've already revised my will. Half my estate will go to cancer research. The other half to a foundation supporting hospice nurses who need financial assistance. I realized that if I want my life's work to mean something, I should support those who share my values. The color drained from his face. You're cutting me out completely? Your own son? I've set up a modest trust for you. Enough to help, not enough to harm. I've seen what sudden wealth does to people who haven't earned it. I won't do that to you. Ryan's face contorted with rage. You self-righteous. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up with Saint Valerie? The woman who sacrificed everything, who never let anyone forget how hard she worked, how much she gave up. You didn't just take care of me. You used me to feel good about yourself, to feel superior. The venom in his voice startled me. Was this how he truly saw our life together? As some martyrdom complex on my part? I loved you, I said simply. Everything I did was out of love. No, he spat. Everything you did was to ensure I'd be forever grateful, forever indebted. And now that I'm not playing my assigned role, you're punishing me. Megan tugged his arm. Ryan, let's go. This isn't helping. With one last withering glance, they left. The door closed with a soft click that somehow felt more final than a slam would have. I sank back against my pillows, emotional exhaustion weighing heavier than the physical kind. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Come in, I called, expecting a nurse. Instead, Dr. Chen entered, concern etched on her face. I passed your son and his wife in the hallway. They seemed upset. Are you okay? Not really, I admitted. But I will be. She sat beside my bed. Family can be the most complicated medicine of all. Sometimes healing means difficult conversations. Or realizing that some relationships can't be healed, I said quietly. Dr. Chen squeezed my hand. Focus on getting better, Valerie. One day at a time. The rest will sort itself out. But life rarely sorts itself out neatly, a lesson I'd learn again 3 weeks later at the annual Portland Cancer Research Foundation Gala. I hadn't planned to attend. My treatment left me exhausted, and large social gatherings seemed overwhelming. But Dr. Chen convinced me it would be good for my spirits. Just for an hour, she promised. The foundation does incredible work, and as a nurse and patient, your perspective is valuable. So there I was, wearing a silk head wrap to cover my baldness, a designer gown carefully chosen to drape elegantly over my too-thin frame, seated at a table near the stage. I didn't expect to enjoy myself, but there was something surprisingly freeing about being in a room where illness wasn't hidden or whispered about, where survivors were celebrated and the reality of cancer acknowledged openly. I was sipping water and chatting with a radiation oncologist when I spotted them across the crowded ballroom. Ryan and Megan, looking polished and perfect in evening wear, mingling with Portland's elite. My stomach dropped. Of course they'd be here. Ryan's firm handled marketing for several healthcare organizations. Valerie, are you okay? You've gone pale, Dr. Chen asked from beside me. My son is here, I explained, gesturing discreetly. We didn't exactly part on good terms. She followed my gaze. Ah, I see. We can leave if you'd prefer. No, I said, surprising myself. I'm not hiding. For nearly an hour, we successfully avoided each other in the crowded space. But then came the auction portion of the evening, a fundraiser where attendees could bid on luxury items donated by sponsors, with proceeds going to cancer research. Our next item, announced the MC, is truly special. A week-long stay at a private beachfront villa in Cannon Beach, donated by Pacific Northwest Luxury Properties. This 4-bedroom retreat offers panoramic ocean views, a private chef for 2 dinners of your choice, and exclusive beach access. Bidding starts at $5,000. I'd always loved Cannon Beach. During Ryan's childhood, we'd save all year for a 3-day stay in a modest motel half a mile from the shore. We'd collect shells, build sandcastles, and watch the sunset behind Haystack Rock. Those had been some of our happiest moments. 5,000, called a voice from the back. 7,000, countered another. I raised my paddle. 10,000. The bidding escalated quickly. 15, 20, 25,000. Each time, I countered immediately. From across the room, I caught Ryan watching me, his expression unreadable. 30,000, I called when the bidding slowed. 35, came a new voice, Ryan's. Our eyes locked across the ballroom. This wasn't about a vacation anymore. 40,000, I responded. 45, he countered. The room had grown hushed, attention focused on our back and forth. Most people had lowered their paddles, recognizing this had become something personal. $50,000, I stated clearly. Ryan hesitated, then raised his paddle. 60,000. I didn't hesitate. $100,000. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The auctioneer blinked in surprise. 100,000 going once. Going twice? Ryan's jaw tightened, but he didn't raise his paddle. Sold to the lovely lady in blue for $100,000. Applause erupted around me. Dr. Chen squeezed my arm. That was quite a statement. It's for a good cause, I replied, but we both knew it was more than that. As the crowd dispersed for intermission, I made my way toward the terrace for fresh air. Ryan intercepted me near the doors. Quite a show, Mom. 100,000 for a beach. House rental? Trying to prove something? I met his gaze steadily. I wanted to support the foundation, and I've always loved Cannon Beach. You know that. Right. Nothing to do with outbidding me in front of everyone. You made it a competition, Ryan. Not me. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You know, people are talking. The mysterious nurse who suddenly has millions to throw around. Not everyone believes the saint story you're selling. I don't care what people believe. I know the truth. Do you? His eyes narrowed. Because from where I stand, it looks like you manipulated a dying old man, and now you're using his money to punish the son who saw through your act. The cruelty of his words stole my breath. How had we come to this? Is that what you tell yourself to justify how you treated me? I asked quietly. That I somehow deserved it? You're not the victim here, Mom. You're the one holding all the cards now. I never wanted cards to hold, Ryan. I wanted a son who loved me enough to help when I was sick and scared. That's all. His expression flickered. Just for a moment, I thought I glimpsed the boy I'd raised. But then Megan appeared at his side, immediately assessing the situation. Ryan, the Hendersons are looking for you. They're interested in discussing that campaign. She gave me a cool nod. Valerie. Ryan hesitated, then turned away without another word. As they walked off, I heard Megan's hushed admonishment. What were you thinking, making a scene like that with the bidding? I returned to my table, suddenly exhausted. Dr. Chen took one look at my face and signaled for a waiter. "We're leaving," she said firmly. "You've had enough for one night." In the car ride home, I stared out the window at Portland's rain-slicked streets. "I don't recognize him anymore," I said finally. "The boy I raised would never have spoken to me that way." "People reveal themselves under pressure," Dr. Chen replied gently. "Sometimes money doesn't change people. It just unveils who they've always been." The truth of her words settled heavily in my chest. Perhaps Ryan had always seen me as a means to an end, my value measured by what I could provide. Or perhaps the money had indeed corrupted something between us, twisted his perception until he could only see calculations where there had once been love. Either way, something had broken that couldn't be mended with apologies or time. The realization brought grief, but also a strange sense of clarity. For decades, I'd defined myself as Ryan's mother, my needs, desires, and dreams secondary to his. Now, facing mortality through cancer and rejection through his actions, I had the opportunity to redefine myself completely. My condo was completed, just as I finished my last round of chemotherapy. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the Willamette River and the city skyline. The kitchen I'd never had time to use was outfitted with high-end appliances. The bathroom featured a soaking tub large enough to ease my aching body. Everything was designed for comfort, beauty, and accessibility. As I settled into this new space, I began reimagining my life. I started with small indulgences, fresh flowers delivered weekly, subscription boxes of books I'd never had time to read, a personal chef who prepared nutrient-rich meals to help me regain my strength. But material comforts only satisfied so much. Dr. Chen encouraged me to find purpose in my recovery. "You've spent your life caring for others," she reminded me. "Don't stop now. Just broaden your definition of care." Her words sparked something in me. I began researching how I might use my unexpected wealth to support causes that mattered. I scheduled meetings with nonprofit directors, toured facilities supporting cancer patients, and consulted with lawyers about establishing my own foundation. 3 months after our confrontation at the gala, my oncology scans came back with the news we'd hoped for: no evidence of disease. I was in remission. That evening, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, a glass of celebratory champagne in my hand. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Heard about your scan results from Dr. Chen's nurse. Glad you're better. Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time, emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to bridge this chasm between us, to find some way back to the relationship we'd once had. But another part, a stronger part, recognized that going backward wasn't the answer. I typed, "Thank you for the message. I'm focusing on healing right now, in all ways. Take care of yourself." Then I silenced my phone, turned my face to the setting sun, and allowed myself to imagine the future stretching before me, a future defined by my own choices, not by obligations or others' expectations. For the first time in decades, I felt truly, completely free. Part 5. Transformation and New Beginning. Spring arrived in Portland with an explosion of cherry blossoms and daffodils, the city emerging from winter's gray embrace, just as I was emerging from cancer's shadow. My hair had begun growing back, surprisingly silver where it had once been brown, and my body, while forever changed, had regained much of its strength. On a particularly beautiful April morning, I found myself sitting across from James Davidson, William Harrison's attorney, in the conference room where I'd first learned of my inheritance. "Everything looks excellent, Valerie," he said, reviewing the documents before us. "The Winters Foundation for Healthcare Workers is officially established. The endowment will generate approximately $150,000 annually for grants to hospice nurses facing financial hardship." I signed the final papers with a sense of profound satisfaction. William's generosity would now extend to others who had chosen the same path of service I had. Nurses who gave everything to their patients while often struggling to make ends meet themselves. "William would be proud," Davidson said, gathering the documents. He always said you understood the value of compassion in a way few people do. I'm just paying forward what he gave me, I replied. A chance to live without constant financial worry. Speaking of which, Davidson cleared his throat. There's another matter we should discuss. Your son's attorney has contacted me again. I sighed. What does he want now? They're suggesting that Mr. Harrison wasn't of sound mind when he amended his will to include you. They're threatening to contest. That's absurd. William was completely lucid until his final days. I agree, and we have substantial medical documentation to prove it. But legal battles can be draining, even when you're in the right. I considered this. Ryan had been increasingly aggressive in his attempts to claim what he saw as his rightful inheritance. After my non-committal response to his text, he'd shifted strategies, first trying to arrange accidental meetings around Portland, then sending lengthy emails about how he'd been reflecting on our relationship, and finally, when those approaches failed, turning to legal intimidation. What do you recommend? I asked. Davidson leaned back in his chair. Honestly, a clean break. Offer a one-time settlement with a non-disclosure agreement and complete severance of financial ties. It's more than he deserves, but it might be worth it for your peace of mind. The suggestion made practical sense, yet something in me resisted. The idea of essentially buying my son's absence from my life. Let me think about it, I said finally. That afternoon, driving back from the attorney's office, I took a detour through my old neighborhood. The modest apartment building where I'd raised Ryan looked shabbier than I remembered, its once cheerful, blue trim now peeling. I parked across the street, memories washing over me. Ryan riding his first bike in the parking lot, the Christmas we strung popcorn garlands because we couldn't afford ornaments, the night he got his college acceptance letter, and we danced around our tiny kitchen. Had it all been a lie? No, I decided. Those moments were real. What had changed wasn't the past, but our present understanding of it. Ryan had rewritten our history to justify his behavior, casting me as manipulative where I had only been loving, seeing calculation where there had been sacrifice. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Dr. Chen's name flashed on the screen. I have news, she said when I answered. Remember that young nurse who helped during your treatments? Andrea? Of course. She was wonderful. She's in a terrible situation. Her little boy has been diagnosed with leukemia, and she's had to take unpaid leave to care for him. Her husband lost his job last month, and they're facing eviction. My mind flashed to those desperate years after Mark left, when I'd worked multiple jobs and still barely kept Ryan and myself afloat. Where are they now? I asked. At the hospital. Trev's starting treatment today. Text me the room number. I'm on my way. 30 minutes later, I entered the pediatric oncology ward carrying a large gift basket filled with comfort items. Soft blankets, gentle toiletries, gift cards for the hospital cafe, and a handful of toys for a sick little boy. The nurses recognized me from my own treatment days, greeting me with warm smiles as I made my way to room 412. Andrea sat beside a hospital bed where a small boy, no more than 4, was sleeping. She looked up as I entered, momentary confusion giving way to recognition. Valerie, what are you doing here? I set the basket on a side table. Dr. Chen told me about Trev. I wanted to see if there was anything I could do to help. Andrea's professional composure crumbled. That's so kind, but we'll manage somehow. We always do. I sat in the chair beside her. I used to say the same thing. I'll manage somehow. I said it through double shifts and mounting bills. I said it when the electricity got shut off and when I had to choose between new shoes for Ryan or paying the rent. Tears filled her eyes. It's the most helpless feeling, isn't it? Knowing your child needs you, but also knowing you need to work to support them. It is, I agreed, and no parent should have to make that choice. I reached into my purse and withdrew an envelope. This is for you. It's not charity. It's support from someone who's been where you are. She opened the envelope slowly, her eyes widening at the cashier's check inside. $20,000? Valerie, I can't possibly. You can, and you will. It's the first grant from the Winters Foundation for Healthcare Workers. Use it for rent, medical bills, whatever. Your job right now is to be with Trev. Andrea stared at the check, then at me. I don't know what to say. Say you'll let people help you. That's something I had to learn the hard way. After leaving the hospital, I drove to Cannon Beach. The vacation property I'd bid on at the gala had sparked something in me, memories of happier times, and a longing for the ocean's healing presence. On a whim, I'd contacted a real estate agent and discovered a beachfront property for sale, not a rental, but a home I could call my own. The realtor met me at the property, a weathered but elegant cedar-sided house perched on a bluff overlooking the Pacific. As we walked through the light-filled rooms, I found myself mentally arranging furniture, planning garden spaces, imagining morning coffee on the deck while watching waves crash against Haystack Rock. It needs some updating, the realtor cautioned, noting my interest. The kitchen is original to the 1990s build, and the master bathroom could use a complete renovation. I ran my hand along a windowsill, feeling the warmth of the afternoon sun on the wood. It has good bones. The rest can be changed. By sunset, I'd made an offer. By the end of the week, it was accepted. Within a month, I was overseeing renovations, finding unexpected joy in selecting finishes and furnishings for a space that would be wholly mine. Throughout this process, Ryan continued his campaign of legal intimidation. His attorney sent increasingly threatening letters, culminating in a formal notice of intent to contest William's will. Each communication painted me as a calculating manipulator who had taken advantage of a dying man, while portraying Ryan as the rightful heir to assets that should have remained in the family. After particularly stressful exchanges with the attorneys, I would drive to Cannon Beach, sometimes staying overnight in a hotel while construction continued on my new home. The rhythm of the waves and the vastness of the horizon helped put things in perspective. This legal battle was just another form of cancer, a malignancy attempting to consume my newfound peace. One evening, as I walked barefoot along the shore, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Mom, it's me." Ryan's voice sounded strained. "Ryan, I'm surprised to hear from you directly. I thought we were communicating through attorneys now." He sighed heavily. "Can we not do this? Can we just talk like normal people for once?" "I've always been open to talking. You're the one who escalated to legal threats. Because you left me no choice. You've cut me out completely. Your only son. How did you expect me to react?" I stopped walking, waves lapping at my ankles. "I expected you to respect my decisions about my own life and the money that was left to me, not try to claim it as your birthright. But that's just it. I am your only family. If anyone has a right to..." "No one has a right to William's money except the person he chose to leave it to," I interrupted. "And you've made it abundantly clear that you see me as nothing more than access to that money." "That's not true," he protested. "You're twisting everything again." "Am I? When was the last time you asked how I was feeling, whether my cancer has stayed in remission, what my hopes are for the future?" "You haven't, Ryan, because you don't care about me as a person, only what I can provide." Silence stretched between us, filled only by the sound of waves and distant seagulls. "Where are you?" he asked finally, his voice quieter. "Cannon Beach. I bought a house here." "You always loved that place," he said, and for a moment, I heard something like genuine emotion in his voice. "Remember when we used to count starfish in the tide pools?" "I remember," I said softly. "I remember everything, Ryan." Another pause. Look, maybe we got off track. Maybe we both said things we didn't mean. But we're family. Surely that counts. For something. I closed my eyes, feeling the wind against my face. It counts for everything. That's why your rejection when I needed you most hurt so deeply. I want to make it right, he said. Let me try. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine reconciliation. Sunday dinners at my beach house, rebuilding trust one conversation at a time, perhaps even finding our way back to something resembling love. Then I remembered his words at the gala. You manipulated a dying old man, and now you're using his money to punish the son who saw through your act. Some wounds cut too deep for simple healing. I don't think that's possible right now, Ryan. Too much has happened. So that's it? After everything, you're just cutting me off? I'm choosing peace, I corrected gently. For both of us. My attorney will contact yours with a final settlement offer. Once it's accepted, we'll both be free to move forward. Without each other, he said bitterly. Sometimes that's the healthiest choice. After we hung up, I stood at the water's edge for a long time, watching the sun sink below the horizon in a blaze of orange and pink. Grief and relief mingled in my heart. Grief for the relationship we'd lost, relief for the clarity I'd finally claimed. 2 weeks later, the settlement was accepted. Ryan received a one-time payment of $500,000 in exchange for dropping all legal claims and signing a non-disclosure agreement. Our financial ties were completely severed, and with them, the last vestiges of our relationship. That same week, I received the keys to my finished beach house. As I walked through the renovated spaces, the gleaming kitchen where I planned to learn gourmet cooking, the sunroom filled with plants, the master bedroom with its panoramic ocean view, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This was where I belonged. Over the following months, I slowly built a new life. I joined a book club in town, volunteered at the local library, took painting classes at the community center. I expanded the Winters Foundation, establishing a scholarship program for nursing students from disadvantaged backgrounds. I traveled, first to nearby Seattle and Vancouver, then farther afield to places I'd always dreamed of visiting: Paris, Rome, Kyoto. Dr. Chen visited often, sometimes bringing colleagues who became friends. Andrea and little Trev came for a weekend after his successful treatment, his laughter as he chased waves along the shore the sweetest music I'd ever heard. Occasionally, I'd hear news of Ryan through mutual acquaintances. He and Megan had moved to Seattle for a new job opportunity. They'd had a baby girl. They'd separated briefly, then reconciled. These snippets would bring a momentary pang, but no longer the searing pain they once had. One autumn afternoon, nearly 2 years after my diagnosis, I sat on my deck watching an impressive storm roll in from the Pacific. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, wind whipping the waves into a frenzy of white caps. There was something magnificent about the raw power of nature, beautiful even in its ferocity. My phone chimed, with a text from Andrea. Trev's 1-year scan came back clear. We did it. Eternally grateful for your support. You changed our lives. I smiled, my heart full. This was my legacy now, not merely the passing of genetic material or family name, but the tangible impact I could have on lives around me. William had understood this when he left me his fortune. It wasn't really about the money at all, but about the difference it could make when placed in the right hands. Lightning flashed across the darkening sky, followed by a rumble of thunder. Most people would head inside, seeking shelter from the coming storm. But I remained, face turned toward the elemental display. I had weathered worse storms than this: cancer, betrayal, the death of a relationship I'd treasured for decades. I had emerged not just surviving, but transformed. The first heavy raindrops began to fall, cool against my skin. I didn't rush to escape them. Instead, I closed my eyes and let them wash over me, cleansing, renewing, promising life after the deluge. This wasn't the future I'd planned all those years ago as a young nurse, as a single mother, as a woman who defined herself through service to others. It was something entirely unexpected. A life rebuilt from ashes, shaped by my own hands according to my own desires. And it was, in every way that mattered, enough. The days after Ryan's visit blended together in a haze of medication and treatment. Each morning, I woke to the same sterile hospital ceiling, the same gentle beeping of monitors, the same rotation of medical staff checking vitals and adjusting IVs. But beneath this monotony, something profound was shifting within me, a fundamental realignment of my priorities and perspective that would alter the course of my remaining years. One afternoon, as a nurse changed my chemotherapy drip, she mentioned offhandedly that the staff had a nickname for me. "The Duchess," she said with a smile, "because you never complain, even when we know you're in pain, and you always thank everyone, even the night shift who wake you at 3 a.m. I laughed softly. Old habits. When you've spent decades on the other side of healthcare, you develop appreciation for the people doing the hard work. She adjusted my pillow with practiced hands. Most patients with private suites like this aren't so understanding. They expect 5-star hotel service along with their treatment. I spent 35 years wiping other people's bodies, cleaning bodily fluids and holding hands through the worst pain imaginable, I replied. My standards for good service are pretty reasonable. She paused, studying me with newfound curiosity. You really were one of us, weren't you? Not just saying that. Portland Mercy Hospital, Oncology and then Hospice, 1987 to 2022. Her eyes widened slightly. Wait, Valerie Winters? The Valerie Winters? The one they still talk about in nursing school? This caught me off guard. They talk about me in nursing school? She nodded enthusiastically. You're basically a legend. Professor Martinez uses your patient care protocols as case studies. She says you revolutionized end-of-life care standards for the entire Pacific Northwest region. A warm feeling spread through my chest that had nothing to do with medication. All those years of work, the endless shifts, the emotional toll, someone had noticed. Someone had thought it mattered enough to teach to others. I had no idea, I said quietly. Your methods for pain management and family involvement are still the gold standard. I can't believe I'm actually taking care of Valerie Winters. She looked almost starstruck, which felt ridiculous given my current state, bald, gaunt, and tethered to an IV pole. Later that evening, as I picked at my dinner, I turned this conversation over in my mind. While Ryan had dismissed my career as nothing more than scrubbing bedpans, others saw value in the work I'd done. My contributions hadn't vanished simply because my son failed to appreciate them. This realization sparked something new within me, not just anger at Ryan's rejection, not just determination to survive cancer, but a genuine curiosity about what else my life could become. For decades, I'd defined myself primarily as Ryan's mother and as a caregiver. With one role severed and the other temporarily suspended, who was I now? Who could I become? The following morning, still contemplating these questions, I received an unexpected visitor. Emma Hadley from Zurich Private Bank arrived carrying a sleek leather portfolio and a small potted orchid. I hope I'm not intruding, she said, placing the flower on my bedside table. I thought you might appreciate something, living among all this medical equipment. It's beautiful, I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. And not an intrusion at all. Hospital days get rather monotonous. She sat in the visitor's chair, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. I wanted to check in personally. Mr. Harrison was more than a client to our institution. He was a friend. He'd want to ensure you're receiving everything you need during this challenging time. You knew William well? I asked, curious about this connection I hadn't been aware of. 20 years as his financial advisor. I managed his European investments, while he handled North American markets himself. He was brilliant, demanding, and surprisingly sentimental for a man in high finance. Her expression softened. The last time I saw him, about a year before his diagnosis, he mentioned feeling that his life had been successful, but somehow incomplete. He'd accumulated wealth, but missed creating lasting human connections. He never married. Emma shook her head. There was someone once, in his 30s. It ended badly. His choice, his regret. After that, he threw himself into work. By the time he wanted more, he'd forgotten how to build relationships outside of boardrooms. She adjusted her glasses. That's why your friendship meant so much. To him. You saw the man, not the money. I thought of those long afternoons in the hospice center, William teaching me about Renaissance art, or explaining global economic patterns while I adjusted his medication. We'd formed a genuine connection across vastly different life experiences, something increasingly rare in our stratified world. I miss our conversations, I admitted. He had such a curious mind. He said the same about you. Emma opened her portfolio. Now, shall we discuss your financial situation? I've prepared several scenarios based on your current and anticipated needs. For the next hour, Emma guided me through the intricacies of wealth management with remarkable clarity. She explained investment strategies, tax implications, and philanthropic options without condescension or unnecessary jargon. By the time she closed her portfolio, I had a much clearer understanding of not just what I possessed, but what I could accomplish with it. You've given me a lot to think about, I said. Take your time. Focus on healing first. The money will be there when you're ready to make decisions. She rose to leave, then paused. One more thing. William added a personal letter to his bequest. His attorney was instructed to deliver it once you accessed the trust. Would you like me to have it sent here? I nodded, curious and slightly apprehensive about what William might have wanted to tell me. The letter arrived the next day, delivered by courier in a simple cream-colored envelope. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded the single, page covered in William's distinctive handwriting. Bold, slanting letters that seemed to charge forward across the paper, just as he had moved through life. My dear Valerie, if you're reading this, I've departed this world, and you've accepted my final gift. Knowing your character, you've likely struggled with this acceptance, questioning whether you deserve such a sum. Let me assure you, you do. Society assigns arbitrary value to different forms of work. We reward those who move money far more generously than those who ease suffering. This imbalance has always struck me as one of capitalism's great moral failures. What you gave me in my final months, dignity, understanding, genuine connection, is beyond financial measurement. Yet paradoxically, money is the only tool at my disposal to express my gratitude. I have one request. Don't merely survive with this inheritance. Thrive. You've spent decades in service to others. Now, permit yourself to experience the freedom that financial security brings. Travel. Create. Rest. Whatever brings you joy. Remember what you told me about the night sky in eastern Oregon, where you grew up. How on clear nights, the stars seemed close enough to touch? You said those moments taught you that beauty exists even in darkness. Your presence brought that lesson back to me when I needed it most. Look up at those stars again, Valerie. They're within your reach now. With deepest gratitude, William. I pressed the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face. In that moment, something crystallized within me. A resolution that had been forming since Ryan's rejection, since the diagnosis, since William's bequest. I would not merely survive cancer. I would not simply exist in the aftermath of my son's betrayal. I would, as William urged, thrive. That afternoon, I made 3 phone calls. First, to a real estate agent specializing in luxury properties. inquiring about waterfront homes in Cannon Beach. Second, to the Portland Cancer Research Foundation, discussing the establishment of a fund for hospice nurses requiring financial assistance during personal health crises. Third, to Dr. Chen, asking for a referral to the best nutritionist and physical therapist to optimize my recovery. By the time night fell, bringing with it another round of nausea and bone-deep fatigue, I had the beginnings of a plan for my future, a future I was suddenly, fiercely determined to claim. 2 weeks later, the hospital nutritionist stopped by, with a concerned expression. "Your protein levels are still too low," she said, reviewing my chart. "Are you managing to eat the supplemental shakes?" I grimaced. "I try, but they taste like sweetened chalk." "Unfortunately, that's a common complaint." She tapped her pen against her clipboard, thinking. "What foods did you enjoy before treatment? Sometimes we can modify favorites to make them more palatable during chemo." The question caught me off guard. What foods had I enjoyed? For decades, my meals had been practical, economical, and rushed, fuel rather than pleasure. I'd cook proper dinners for Ryan, of course, but for myself? A granola bar between shifts, yesterday's reheated pasta at midnight, coffee strong enough to keep me alert through double shifts. "I don't really know," I admitted. I never had time to develop preferences. The nutritionist looked up, something like compassion crossing her face. "Well, now might be a good time to discover what you actually like. Not what's convenient or affordable, but what brings you genuine pleasure." That simple suggestion, to discover what I actually liked, became a kind of mantra during my recovery. After each chemotherapy session, when the worst of the nausea subsided, I'd try something new. Raspberries with fresh cream, sourdough bread from an artisanal bakery, rich, dark chocolate from a local chocolatier. Small pleasures, yes, but revolutionary for someone who had spent a lifetime putting her own desires last. This exploration extended beyond food. I ordered art books similar to ones William and I had discussed, spent hours lost in their pages. When my energy allowed, I sampled different genres of music, discovering a particular fondness for jazz piano. I requested fabric swatches for my future home, delighting in the sensory experience of silk, linen, and cashmere against my fingertips. Dr. Chen noticed the change during my weekly check-in. "You seem different," she observed. "More present." "I'm learning who I am," I replied. "It sounds ridiculous at 60, doesn't it? But I'm discovering I barely know myself." "Not ridiculous at all. Many people never take that journey." She checked my lymph nodes with practiced hands. "The treatment is working well. Your body is responding better than we anticipated." "Is that unusual?" "Not exactly unusual, but noteworthy. Mindset impacts physical healing more than most of my colleagues would admit." She sat back, regarding me thoughtfully. "Patients who find purpose during treatment often show better outcomes. You seem to have found yours." "I'm not sure it's purpose exactly," I said. "More like curiosity about what comes next." She smiled. "That's as good a purpose as any." As my physical strength gradually returned, I began venturing beyond the hospital. For brief excursions, the real estate agent took me to view several properties in Cannon Beach. None quite right, but each visit clarifying my vision for my future home. I met with financial advisors to structure the hospice nursing fund I was establishing. I even spent an afternoon at an art gallery, purchasing my first original painting, a seascape that captured the Oregon coast's mercurial beauty. These small freedoms, ordinary for most people, felt extraordinary after months of medical confinement and a lifetime of financial constraint. Each decision made solely for my own benefit, each choice based on my preferences alone, was both terrifying and exhilarating. Of course, Ryan remained a shadow over this emerging new life. Though I'd stopped responding to his increasingly manipulative messages, I couldn't stop thinking about him, wondering how the sweet boy who'd once made me Mother's Day cards from construction paper had become the calculating man who'd discarded me when I became inconvenient. Had I somehow facilitated this transformation through my own actions? Had my sacrifice somehow taught him that my value existed only in what I could provide? These questions haunted me until one particularly difficult night after chemotherapy, when nausea kept me awake despite medication. At 3 a.m, scrolling mindlessly through my phone for distraction, I came across an old article about narcissistic family systems. The description of children raised by self-sacrificing parents who inadvertently teach them that love equals martyrdom stopped me cold. When a parent consistently subjugates their own needs, they may unintentionally teach children that love means complete self-erasure, the article stated. These children don't learn healthy reciprocity because they never see the parent modeling appropriate self-care or boundary setting. The words pierced me. In my determination to give Ryan everything, had I actually given him a distorted view of love? By never allowing him to see me prioritize myself, by making him the center of my universe, had I inadvertently raised him to believe this was his natural position in all relationships? I put down my phone, staring out the window at Portland's glittering nightscape. If there was truth in this theory, then my relationship with Ryan had been fundamentally flawed long before my cancer diagnosis or William's inheritance. Our current estrangement wasn't just about his moral failure in a moment of crisis. It was the inevitable result of patterns established decades ago. This realization didn't excuse Ryan's cruelty, but it helped me understand it. More importantly, it released me from the crushing weight of betrayal. Our broken relationship wasn't a sudden tragedy, but the natural conclusion to an unsustainable dynamic. In that understanding, I found an unexpected peace. The next morning, I asked Dr. Chen to recommend a therapist. Psychological support is absolutely appropriate during cancer treatment, she agreed. I can suggest several excellent practitioners who specialize in working with cancer patients. Actually, I said, I'd prefer someone who focuses on family dynamics and personal identity. The cancer is part of my journey, but it's not the whole story. Dr. Chen studied me for a moment, then nodded. I know just the person. Dr. Leanne Martinez. She's extraordinary, challenging but compassionate. She doesn't take many new clients, but I think she'll make an exception for you. Dr. Martinez did indeed make an exception, fitting me into her schedule the following week. From our first session in her warm, book-lined office, I knew Dr. Chen's recommendation had been perfect. Dr. Martinez listened without judgment as I described my relationship with Ryan, my career in nursing, William's bequest, and my ongoing identity transformation. It sounds like you're experiencing several significant transitions simultaneously, she observed. Cancer diagnosis, estrangement from your only child, sudden wealth, and a fundamental reimagining of your identity. Any one of these would be challenging. Together, they're seismic. Sometimes I feel like I'm standing in the rubble of my former life, not sure what to salvage and what to leave behind, I admitted. That's a powerful metaphor, she said. In earthquake-prone regions, architects examine buildings after tremors to determine what remains structurally sound and what must be demolished for safety. Perhaps we can approach your situation similarly, assessing what foundations remain solid in your life and what needs to be redesigned. Over the following weeks, as my body fought cancer with chemical warfare, Dr. Martinez helped me excavate the psychological patterns that had shaped my life. We explored my childhood as the daughter of a single mother in rural Oregon, my early marriage to Mark, the adoption of Ryan, and my devotion to nursing. Throughout these discussions, one theme emerged consistently. I had always defined myself through service to others, measuring my worth by what I could provide rather than who I intrinsically was. The question now, Dr. Martinez suggested during our 5th session, is whether you want to continue with that definition or create a new one. The query lingered with me for days. Who was Valerie Winters outside of her roles as mother, nurse, caretaker? What did she want? Not for others, but for herself. What brought her joy, sparked her curiosity, engaged her mind? I began keeping a journal, documenting my discoveries. I enjoyed abstract expressionist art, but found traditional landscapes dull. I preferred savory flavors to sweet. I loved the sound of rainfall but hated getting wet. I was drawn to minimalist design, but liked touches of unexpected color. I valued punctuality, intellectual honesty, and quiet competence. I detested pretension, especially when it masqueraded as expertise. These small insights accumulated, gradually forming a portrait of the woman I was beyond my relationships and professional identity. Some elements surprised me. I discovered an unexpected interest in architecture and design that had never had space to develop. Other revelations confirmed what I'd always known but rarely acknowledged, like my deep connection to Oregon's coastal landscapes and my need for periods of solitude. As my chemotherapy progressed, my physical transformation paralleled this internal one. My body, once familiar territory after decades of existence, became foreign, hair falling away, weight dropping, skin-changing texture. Initially distressing, this metamorphosis gradually became symbolic. I wasn't just fighting cancer. I was shedding an old self to make way for something new. The physical ordeal of cancer treatment remains beyond adequate description to anyone who hasn't experienced it. There were days when simply breathing felt like an achievement, when nausea transformed the world into a nauseating carousel, when pain medications clouded my thoughts until I could barely form coherent sentences. On the worst days, I questioned whether survival was worth such suffering. Yet even in those darkest moments, something had fundamentally changed. Unlike my previous struggles, raising Ryan alone, working punishing shifts, stretching inadequate resources, I wasn't fighting merely to survive. I was fighting for the chance to truly live, perhaps for the first time. This distinction became clearest the day Ryan and Megan made their unexpected appearance at the Portland Cancer Research Foundation Gala. I hadn't planned to attend, still weakened from my most recent treatment, but Dr. Chen had insisted. "The foundation has done remarkable work supporting patients like you," she'd argued. "Besides, your first public appearance should be somewhere you'll feel supported. The medical community knows your value, Valerie, even if your family doesn't." Oh, so I'd agreed, despite concerns about my appearance. A skilled stylist had fitted me with a natural-looking wig, and an expert makeup artist had restored some color to my pallid complexion. The midnight blue gown I'd selected camouflaged my weight loss while emphasizing what remained of my collarbones and shoulders. Looking at my reflection before leaving for the event, I barely recognized myself, not because of the cancer's ravages, but because of the quiet confidence in the eyes that looked back at me. I'd never dressed for myself before, never presented myself as someone who deserved attention or admiration. The woman in the mirror looked elegant, yes, but more importantly, she looked self-possessed. The gala itself was held in the grand ballroom of the Westmore Hotel, the same establishment where I'd stayed immediately after leaving my apartment. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables decorated with elaborate floral arrangements. A string quartet played softly in one corner. Medical professionals mingled with wealthy donors, everyone united by the common cause of advancing cancer research and treatment. Dr. Chen stayed close as we entered, making introductions to colleagues and benefactors. "This is Valerie Winters," she would say. Not only is she one of our patients showing tremendous progress, but she was also a pioneering hospice nurse whose protocols we still use today. The dual recognition, as both patient and professional, felt strangely validating. These people saw the complexity of my identity, not just a single facet. They asked thoughtful questions about my nursing career, listened attentively to my perspectives on patient care, and shared news of recent research advances that offered hope to people with my diagnosis. I was deep in conversation with a radiation oncologist when I first noticed Ryan across the room. He stood near the bar, Megan at his side, both looking polished and prosperous among Portland's elite. My heart stuttered in my chest, an involuntary response to the sight of my only child. Dr. Chen followed my gaze. "Your son?" she asked quietly. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "His firm handles marketing for several healthcare organizations," she explained. "They're regular attendees at these functions. He doesn't know I'm here?" I managed to say. "Would you like to leave?" I considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, I might have retreated, avoiding potential conflict or pain. But the woman I was becoming, the woman who had survived monthly rounds of cellular poison, who had rebuilt her identity from scattered fragments, who had learned to state her preferences without apology, she would not hide. "No," I said firmly. "This is where I belong tonight." For over an hour, we successfully navigated the crowded ballroom without direct encounter. I focused on my conversations, genuinely engaged by discussions of emerging treatments and patient advocacy initiatives. Yet I remained acutely aware of Ryan's location at all times, as if an invisible thread still connected us despite everything. The auction portion of the evening brought the confrontation I'd both dreaded and anticipated. As bids escalated for the Cannon Beach vacation property, I felt a surprising surge of competitive spirit. This place held memories for us both, but they were my memories too, not just Ryan's. The childhood vacations I'd scrimped and saved to provide, the sunsets we'd watched together from the shore, the sandcastles we'd built only to see them washed away with the tide, they weren't his alone to claim. So I bid, and when Ryan entered the competition, I bid higher. Each raise of my paddle felt like reclaiming something I'd surrendered long ago. Not just memories, but agency. The right to want something simply because I wanted it, not because it served someone else's needs. When I called out my final bid, $100,000, the amount wasn't about the property's value or even about outbidding Ryan. It was about declaring, publicly and unequivocally, that I had the right to pursue what mattered to me, regardless of its impact on him. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, I chose myself without apology or explanation. The confrontation that followed on the terrace was painful but clarifying. Ryan's accusation that I had manipulated William revealed more about his worldview than he probably intended. He couldn't conceive of generosity without calculation, of relationship without transaction. In his mind, I must have employed some strategy to secure William's fortune, because that's what he would have done. More heartbreaking still was his assertion that I was not the victim, that I was the one holding all the cards now. He genuinely believed that my cancer diagnosis, his rejection, and all that followed were simply moves in some elaborate power game, that my suffering had been performative rather than real. As I watched him walk away with Megan, her hushed admonishment already focusing on appearances rather than substance, I felt a complex, emotional tangle. Grief for the relationship we'd lost, anger at his persistent selfishness, but also, unexpectedly, compassion. Ryan was, in many ways, a product of the environment I had created. His inability to recognize genuine need, his transactional view of relationships, these were limitations he might never overcome. Dr. Chen drove me home after the gala, both of us quiet as we navigated Portland's rain-slicked streets. "Does it get easier?" I finally asked. "Letting go of someone you've loved your whole life?" She considered the question with the thoughtfulness I'd come to appreciate. Not easier, exactly. Different. The pain transforms over time, less sharp, but more complex. You learn to carry it differently. I keep hoping for some moment of resolution, some conversation where everything is finally said, everything understood. Those conversations rarely happen outside of movies, she said gently. Real endings are usually messy, incomplete. We rarely get the closure we think we need. Then how do people move forward? By accepting the incompleteness, by recognizing that understanding someone completely isn't a prerequisite for letting them go. She glanced at me briefly before returning her eyes to the road. Sometimes the healthiest thing we can do is release our need for the perfect ending. As we pulled up to my condo building, she added, "Your relationship with Ryan may never have the resolution you desire, but that doesn't mean your own story can't have a beautiful next chapter." That night, standing at my window watching lightning illuminate Portland's skyline, I contemplated this wisdom. Perhaps closure wasn't something Ryan could give me. Perhaps it was something I needed to create for myself, not through one definitive conversation or dramatic gesture, but through the gradual process of building a life that honored my own needs and values. I thought of William's letter, tucked safely in my bedside drawer. Don't merely survive with this inheritance, thrive. He hadn't defined what thriving should look like for me. That was my task alone. The pathway wasn't yet clear, but I understood with growing certainty that it wouldn't include chasing Ryan's approval or understanding. That chapter was closing, whether neatly resolved or not. 2 days later, I received the preliminary results. From my latest scan, the cancer was responding to treatment better than expected. If this continues, Dr. Chen explained, we might be looking at complete remission sooner than anticipated. And if we achieve remission? I asked. What then? Monitoring, follow-up treatments to ensure it doesn't return, but also, Valerie, life. Whatever version of it you choose to create. Whatever version of life I chose to create. The possibilities stretched before me, simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. For decades, my choices had been constrained by responsibility and limited resources. Now, facing the precious gift of additional time and the freedom provided by William's generosity, the question wasn't whether I could survive, but how I wanted to live. That evening, I began researching oceanfront properties in Cannon Beach. Not just vacation rentals, but permanent homes. I explored courses at Portland State University in art history and architectural design. I contacted William's attorney about establishing a foundation to support healthcare workers facing personal crises. As rain tapped against my windows, I opened my journal and wrote, "Today marks the beginning of my next chapter. Not as Ryan's mother, not as William's beneficiary, not as a cancer patient or former nurse. Simply as Valerie, a woman finally learning to place herself at the center of her own story." My oncologist's words echoed in my mind as I stood on the balcony of my downtown condo, watching the first light of dawn transform the Willamette River from black to silver. Complete remission. After 6 grueling months of treatment, my body was healing. The cancer cells that had once threatened to consume me were retreating, defeated by medicine, determination, and perhaps a touch of spite. I wasn't just surviving, I was prevailing. The morning air carried the scent of rain and possibility as I sipped my tea, mentally preparing for the day ahead. My appointment with the real estate agent was scheduled for 11, followed by a meeting with the foundation lawyers at 2. Between those commitments, I planned to visit an art gallery that had just received a collection of Pacific Northwest landscapes I'd been eyeing for my new home. A full day, but not an exhausting one. I was learning to balance activity with the rest my recovering body still required. As I dressed, I caught sight of myself in the bedroom mirror. The woman reflected back at me was both familiar and strange, thinner than before, with short silver hair where there had once been shoulder-length brown. Cancer had reshaped me externally, but the more profound transformation lay beneath the surface. I moved with a new purposefulness, spoke with quiet authority, and made decisions without the hesitation that had once characterized my interactions with the world. "Good morning, Ms. Winters," The doorman greeted me as I crossed the lobby. "Your car is waiting outside." Another adjustment, having a driver, Thomas, who arrived punctually each morning in a sleek black sedan. Initially, I'd resisted this luxury, feeling it was somehow excessive, but practical considerations had prevailed. The lingering fatigue from treatment made driving unwise, and Portland's public transportation, while excellent, exposed my compromised immune system to unnecessary risks. "Cannon Beach today?" Thomas asked as he held the door for me. "Yes, I'm meeting Eliza Mitchell at the Sandpiper property." "Excellent choice. Those views are unmatched anywhere on the coast." The drive to Cannon Beach took just under 2 hours, winding through mist-shrouded forests and past small coastal towns. I watched the landscape transform from urban to rural to maritime, mentally cataloging the changes since my last visit decades ago. The Oregon coast remained wild and magnificent, but now boasted more luxury developments nestled among the cliffs and beaches. Eliza was waiting at the property, her silver Mercedes parked in the curved driveway. She smiled broadly as Thomas helped me from the car, her practiced enthusiasm only slightly dampened by the drizzling rain. "Perfect timing. The clouds are beginning to break." She gestured toward the horizon, where indeed a strip of blue was visible. "Wait until you see how the light plays on the water when the sun emerges." The Sandpiper was the 4th property I'd viewed in my search for a coastal retreat. Unlike the others, sleek modern constructions with glass walls and stark white interiors, this house had character. Built in the 1990s by a renowned local architect, it featured cedar siding weathered to a soft silver-gray expansive windows, framed in old-growth fir, and a massive stone fireplace that anchored the great room. The previous owners maintained it meticulously, Eliza explained as we entered. The roof was replaced 3 years ago, and they updated all the mechanical systems last spring. I moved slowly through the space, absorbing its energy. The kitchen, while not ostentatious, featured high-quality appliances and striking blue slate countertops. The primary bedroom suite offered panoramic ocean views, and a bathroom with a soaking tub positioned perfectly for watching storms roll in from the Pacific. A secondary structure connected by a covered walkway housed a guest apartment and studio space. "What's upstairs?" I asked, noticing a graceful spiral staircase ascending from the great room. A reading loft and small observatory. The architect was an amateur astronomer. Eliza led the way up the stairs. "This is my favorite feature of the house." The loft was intimate and welcoming, with built-in bookshelves, a window seat, and a telescope positioned near a ceiling that opened to the sky. I imagined myself here on clear nights, watching stars emerge over the ocean, perhaps with a glass of wine and one of the books William and I had discussed during his final months. "It's perfect," I said quietly. Eliza, sensing a sale, maintained a respectful silence as I continued to explore the property. The asking price, $2.9 million, was substantial, but well within my means given William's generosity. More importantly, this house felt right in a way the others hadn't. It wasn't a showcase or status symbol, it was a sanctuary. "I'd like to make an offer," I decided. "The full asking price, contingent on inspection." Eliza's professional composure slipped momentarily, revealing genuine surprise. "That's wonderful. Most buyers negotiate, especially at this price point." "The house is worth what they're asking," I replied simply, "and I suspect there are other interested parties." "There are," she admitted. 3 other showings scheduled this week." "Then let's not waste time." We completed the preliminary paperwork in the great room, the rhythm of waves breaking against the shore providing a soothing backdrop to our transaction. By the time we finished, the sun had indeed broken through the clouds, illuminating the beach and Haystack Rock in golden light. "Congratulations," Eliza said as we shook hands. "I think you'll be very happy here." Happiness. Such a simple concept, yet one I'd neglected for so long. As a young single mother, happiness had seemed an unaffordable luxury. Later, as a hospice nurse, I'd focused on easing others' suffering rather than pursuing my own joy. Even now, emerging from cancer treatment, the idea of prioritizing personal happiness felt almost transgressive. As Thomas drove me back to Portland, I contemplated this resistance. Dr. Martinez, my therapist, would likely trace it to my childhood in rural Oregon, where stoicism was valued above emotional expression. Or perhaps to my years as Ryan's sole provider, when survival consumed all available energy. Whatever its origin, this hesitation to embrace happiness as a legitimate goal was one more habit I needed to shed. My afternoon meeting with the foundation lawyers proved productive. We finalized the structure of the Winters Healthcare Worker Support Fund, establishing clear criteria for grants and assistance programs. The foundation would begin accepting applications within the month, focusing initially on hospice and oncology, nurses facing personal health crises or financial hardships. This is an underserved population, noted Howard Davidson, the lead attorney. Healthcare workers often neglect their own well-being while caring for others. I'm intimately familiar with the pattern, I replied with a wry smile. The initial endowment of $2 million will generate approximately $80,000 annually for grants, his associate added, with potential for growth through additional contributions. I nodded, satisfied with the arrangement. I may increase the endowment in the future, depending on the demand and impact we observe. By the time I returned to my condo that evening, fatigue had settled into my bones, a reminder that despite my improving health, recovery remained a process, rather than an event. I ordered dinner from a nearby restaurant that had become a favorite, then settled on the sofa with the portfolio from the art gallery I'd visited between appointments. The paintings depicted familiar Oregon landscapes, coastal scenes, mountain vistas, forests draped in mist, but with an emotional depth that transcended mere representation. The artist, Teresa Nguyen, captured both the physical reality of these places and their spiritual essence. I was particularly drawn to her portrayal of Cannon Beach at dawn, the famous haystack rock emerging from morning fog like a sentinel from another world. My phone chimed with a text from Dr. Chen. Lab results looking excellent. Continued improvement across all markers. See you Thursday. This simple message brought tears to my eyes, not from relief, though that was certainly present, but from the realization that I genuinely wanted to live. Not merely survive, but live fully, embracing whatever time remained with newfound intention. Cancer had stripped away pretense and obligation, leaving only what mattered: authentic connection, meaningful contribution, and yes, personal joy. As if responding to this epiphany, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Ms. Winters? This is Sophia Martinez from Pacific Northwest Medical Center's nursing program. I recognized the name immediately. The professor my nurse had mentioned. Months ago, the one who used my hospice protocols as teaching examples. Yes, hello. How can I help you? I hope you don't mind the call. Dr. Chen mentioned you might be open to speaking with our advanced practice nursing students about your innovations in end-of-life care. The request caught me off guard. That's flattering, but my clinical work is years behind current practice. On the contrary, Professor Martinez responded, your integrated approach to pain management and family involvement remains revolutionary. Many institutions still haven't fully implemented the models you pioneered. Pride, an unfamiliar sensation, warmed my chest. I'm not sure how effective I'd be as a speaker. I've never done anything like that. Just sharing your experience would be invaluable. These students are entering healthcare at a challenging time. They need to hear from someone who maintained compassion and innovation throughout a long career. I thought of my younger self. Idealistic, determined, often overwhelmed by the limitations of the healthcare system. What might have sustained me during those difficult years? Perhaps exactly this: confirmation that my efforts mattered, that my approaches made a difference. "I'd be honored," I said finally. "Though I should warn you, I'm still recovering from cancer treatment. My energy isn't what it once was." "We'll accommodate whatever you need," Professor Martinez assured me. "And speaking of your treatment, Dr. Chen mentioned your foundation for healthcare workers. That's extraordinary work. It's still in the formation stages, but yes, it's something I feel strongly about. Would you consider allowing us to distribute information about the foundation to our nursing students? Many graduate with crippling debt and face financial vulnerability during their early career years." "Of course. I'd be happy to have my foundation team connect with you." After we ended the call, I sat with a strange new feeling, a sense of coming full circle. For decades, I'd poured myself into nursing, developing approaches born of necessity and intuition rather than formal research. Now, those practical innovations were being taught to a new generation. Through the foundation, I could support nurses facing challenges similar to those I'd encountered. And through teaching, I might pass on not just protocols but perspective. For the first time since my diagnosis, I felt a sense of integration, past, present, and future, aligning into a coherent narrative. My career hadn't ended with retirement or illness. It had simply transformed. The values that had guided my work, compassion, practical problem-solving, dignity for the vulnerable, now informed my philanthropy and legacy. Sleep came easily that night, deep and restorative. I dreamed of the beach house, sunlight streaming through windows, the sound of waves a constant presence. In the dream, I wasn't alone. William was there, healthy and vibrant, discussing economics. While we walked along the shore, Dr. Chen appeared, smiling approvingly at my recovery. Even Ryan was present, not the angry adult who had rejected me, but the curious child who had once collected seashells by my side. I woke with the dream's emotional residue lingering, not sorrow, as might be expected, but a profound sense of continuity. The relationships that had shaped me remained part of my story, regardless of how they had evolved or ended. I carried their imprint even as I moved forward alone. The notification from my home security system came 2 days later, just as I was preparing to leave for my final session with Dr. Martinez. "Alert! Person detected at front entrance. Visitor, Ryan Thompson." I froze, staring at my phone screen where the security camera showed my son standing outside my building's main entrance. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot, his expression a mixture of determination and uncertainty. My first instinct was self-protective. Ignore the alert, proceed with my day as planned, avoid reopening wounds that had finally begun to heal. But something, perhaps the lingering influence of my dream, or simply curiosity, made me press the intercom button. "Ryan? What are you doing here?" He started slightly at my voice, eyes searching for the camera. "Mom, can we talk? Just for a few minutes." The rational part of my brain cataloged all the reasons to refuse: his previous cruelty, his attempt to legally challenge William's bequest, his fundamental misunderstanding of our relationship. But another part, the part that would always remember him as the 4-year-old who had clutched my hand on his first day of kindergarten, hesitated. "I'm on my way out to an appointment," I said finally. "Please," he persisted. 5 minutes. "That's all I'm asking." I sighed, recognizing that closure, if such a thing existed, might require one final conversation. "Come up to 1402. The 6 minutes between this exchange and his arrival at my door were sufficient for composing myself. I chose to meet him not as a wounded mother, but as Valerie Winters, a woman who had faced death, reclaimed her life, and discovered her own worth in the process. The knock when it came was tentative, so unlike the confident rapping that had once announced his presence. I opened the door to find him looking thinner than at our last encounter, with shadows beneath his eyes suggesting recent stress or sleepless nights. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, remaining in the hallway until I gestured him inside. My condo, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and careful curation of art and furniture, clearly surprised him. His eyes moved from the original paintings to the custom shelving to the panoramic city view, mentally calculating the cost of each element. "This is quite a place," he offered, an edge of something, envy, resentment, coloring his tone. "It suits my needs while I'm in the city," I replied neutrally. "Would you like some water?" "No, I'm fine." He remained standing awkwardly near the entry. "You mentioned an appointment. I won't take much of your time." "What can I do for you, Ryan?" He drew a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "I wanted to apologize for how I reacted when you got sick, for the things I said at the gala, for the legal challenges, all of it." The words should have felt momentous, the apology I'd once longed for, but instead landed with curious flatness, like stones dropped into still water. The ripples they created touched nothing vital within. "I appreciate that," I said simply. He seemed thrown by my calm response, perhaps expecting either emotional rejection or eager reconciliation. "That's it? You appreciate my apology? What would you prefer I say? I don't know, that you forgive me? That we can move past this?" His frustration bubbled through the carefully constructed contrition. "I'm trying to make things right, Mom." "Why now?" I asked, genuinely curious. "What's changed since you last threatened legal action?" The question seemed to deflate him further. He sank onto the edge of a chair, running both hands through his hair in a gesture reminiscent of his teenage years. "Megan's pregnant," he said finally. "We're having a daughter in August." Ah, there it was, the catalyst for this sudden desire for reconciliation. Not genuine remorse, but impending fatherhood and all it symbolized. "Congratulations," I offered. "That's wonderful news." "It is," he agreed, some animation returning to his expression. "But it's also terrifying. I've been thinking about what kind of father I want to be, what values I want to teach her." He paused. "And I've been thinking about you, about everything you did for me, all the sacrifices I never really appreciated until now." The irony was almost too perfect, his awakening to parental sacrifice coming only as he prepared to become a father himself. Yet the timing made emotional sense. Pregnancy often triggers reflection on one's own childhood, a reassessment of parental relationships through the lens of impending responsibility. Parenthood has a way of shifting perspective, I acknowledged. "It's made me see how wrong I was," he continued. "When you needed help, I should have stepped up without hesitation. You gave me everything, and I couldn't even offer you a place to stay during cancer treatment." His voice cracked slightly. "What kind of son does that?" The question hung between us, rhetorical yet loaded. Once, his self-recrimination might have prompted me to offer comfort, to minimize his actions to ease his guilt. But that pattern belonged to our old relationship, the one where my needs always came second. "It was a revealing moment," I said instead, "for both of us." He flinched slightly at my honesty. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I was hoping we could start rebuilding, especially with the baby coming, your granddaughter." He leaned forward, expression earnest. "Family should stick together, right?" Family should stick together. The same phrase he'd used during his hospital visit after learning about my inheritance. The context might be different, the emotion perhaps more genuine, but the underlying message contained troubling echoes of his previous attempts at manipulation. "Ryan," I said carefully, "I'm genuinely happy about your child, but I'm concerned that your desire to reconnect has more to do with her than with any real change in how you view our relationship." "That's not fair," he protested. "Becoming. A father has made me realize That family matters, I finished for him. I understand, but family isn't just biology or obligation. It's consistent care, mutual respect, showing up when it's difficult. I met his gaze directly. Those elements have been missing from our relationship for some time, well before my diagnosis. His expression hardened slightly. So, that's it? One mistake and you're writing me off forever? What happened to unconditional love? This isn't about one mistake, and we both know it. It's about a pattern. I paused, choosing my next words with care. As for unconditional love, yes, I've always loved you unconditionally, but love and relationship aren't the same thing. Healthy relationships have boundaries, expectations, consequences. Consequences, he repeated, the word bitter on his tongue. Like cutting me out of your will? Excluding me from your life? Those kinds of consequences? I sighed, recognizing we were veering into familiar territory. His perception of himself as victim, his ability to reframe any discussion of his behavior into an accusation against me. I haven't excluded you from my life, Ryan. I've established boundaries based on how you've treated me. There's a significant difference. He stood abruptly, the momentary vulnerability replaced by the defensive anger I recognized too well. This was a mistake. I should have known you'd turn this into another opportunity to lecture me on my failings. That's not what I'm doing. I kept my voice calm, refusing to engage with his escalating emotion. I'm being honest about where we stand and what would need to change for us to have a healthier relationship. You know what? Forget it. I tried. He moved toward the door. When your granddaughter is born, remember this was your choice. To stay angry, to punish me, to deprive her of a grandmother. The attempted guilt trip was so transparent, it almost made me smile. The old Valerie might have crumbled beneath this emotional manipulation, rushing to reassure him, prioritizing his feelings over my own well-being. But cancer and its aftermath had burned away that tendency toward self-sacrifice. Ryan, I said, as he reached for the doorknob, I'd like to meet your daughter when she's born. I'd like to be part of her life in whatever way makes sense for everyone. But that relationship can't be used as leverage to avoid addressing the issues between us. He paused, hand on the door. For a moment, I glimpsed uncertainty beneath his anger. The realization, perhaps, that his usual tactics were no longer effective. If you mean that, he said finally, you could show it by reinstating me in your will. Actions speak louder than words, right? And there it was, the financial calculation underlying his apparent desire for reconciliation. My heart sank with the confirmation that despite his new insights into parenthood, his fundamental view of our relationship remained transactional. I've already provided for you in my estate planning, I said, a trust that will generate a modest annual income, not enough to eliminate the need for work, but sufficient to provide security and opportunities for your family. Modest, he echoed, disappointment evident. Of course. You never could just give without strings attached. The accusation, so utterly contrary to the reality of our history, might once have wounded me deeply. Now it simply confirmed the necessity of maintaining emotional distance. Goodbye, Ryan. Please give Megan my congratulations on the pregnancy. After he left, I stood at my window watching rain sweep across the city, feeling strangely peaceful despite the difficult encounter. His visit had confirmed what I'd already intuited. Our relationship as it had existed was irreparably altered. Whether something new could eventually emerge remained to be seen, but it would require fundamental changes in his perspective. Changes that seemed unlikely, given his persistent focus on financial gain rather than emotional connection. My phone chimed with a reminder for my appointment with Dr. Martinez. I gathered my things, recognizing that this final session would now have unexpected relevance. The encounter with Ryan had provided perfect material for discussing healthy boundaries, grief for relationships that can't be salvaged, and the liberation that comes with accepting reality rather than clinging to wishful thinking. As I rode the elevator down to meet Thomas, I mentally revised my plans for the coming weeks. The closing on the Cannon Beach property was scheduled for the following Friday. After that, I would need to select a contractor for the minor renovations I envisioned, chose furnishings that reflected my emerging aesthetic preferences, and decide which pieces from my current space would make the transition to coastal living. The foundation would begin accepting applications soon, requiring attention to administrative details and protocols. Professor Martinez had scheduled my speaking engagement with the nursing students for the month's end, giving me time to organize my thoughts and prepare materials. Dr. Chen had suggested a wellness retreat in Arizona for cancer survivors and opportunity to connect with others who understood the physical and emotional toll of the disease. My days were filling with meaningful activities, relationships, and projects, a stark contrast to my previous existence of work and sacrifice. The irony wasn't lost on me. Cancer, which had threatened to end my life, had instead catalyzed a complete reinvention of how I lived it. Thomas was waiting with the car, greeting me with his customary courtesy as I emerged from the building. "To Dr. Martinez's office?" he confirmed. "Yes, please." I settled into the back seat, watching raindrops create intricate patterns on the window. "And Thomas?" "After the appointment, let's stop by that bookstore on Hawthorne. I'd like to pick up some coastal gardening guides." "Excellent idea, Ms. Winters. Planning for the beach house already?" "Yes," I replied, surprising myself with the certainty I felt. "It's time to put down new roots." The metaphor lingered as we navigated Portland's rain-slicked streets, new roots, new growth, new life emerging from ground that had seemed temporarily barren. Cancer had stripped me to essentials, and betrayal had severed connections I'd once considered vital. But from that clearing had come unexpected opportunity, the freedom to define myself not through service or sacrifice, but through authentic choice and deliberate creation. Dr. Martinez welcomed me with her usual perceptive warmth, immediately noting a shift in my demeanor. "Something's happened," she observed as we settled into our respective chairs. "Ryan came to see me this morning," I explained, recounting the visit and my reactions to it. She listened attentively, nodding occasionally. "Your response shows remarkable growth," she noted when I finished. 6 months ago, his appeals to family obligation and impending grandparenthood might have overcome your boundaries. 6 months ago, I was a different person. Indeed. The question now becomes, who are you becoming? This is our final scheduled session. How do you envision moving forward without this structured support? I considered the question carefully. I have more clarity now about what constitutes healthy relationships. I'm learning to recognize manipulation and to maintain boundaries without guilt. Most importantly, I'm developing a stronger sense of my own worth beyond what I contribute to others. Those are significant insights, she affirmed. And, practically speaking, what supports will you rely on as you continue this evolution? I'm building new connections through the foundation and medical center. Dr. Chen has become a friend as well as my oncologist. The Cancer Survivors Group provides understanding for that specific aspect of my journey. I paused, realizing something important. And I'm learning to trust myself, my perceptions, my judgment, my right to prioritize my own well-being. Dr. Martinez smiled, satisfaction evident in her expression. That might be the most important support of all. As our session concluded, she offered a final observation that would stay with me in the months to come. "Valerie, the most profound healing often happens not by recovering what was lost, but by discovering what might yet be created from the clearing life has made." Driving away from her office, Thomas took the route along the river, affording glimpses of water through the dissipating rain. Mentally, I was already at the coast, feeling salt air on my skin, hearing waves against the shore, imagining the garden I would plant with species native to that unique ecosystem. Tomorrow would bring another oncology appointment with Dr. Chen, another marker in the ongoing journey of recovery. Next week, the keys to my beach house, the beginning of a new chapter in a setting that had always brought me peace. Beyond that, stretched possibilities I was only beginning to envision. Perhaps travel to places I'd read about but never seen, volunteering with hospice organizations in a consulting capacity, developing the foundation to support healthcare workers beyond. Portland. For now, it was enough to recognize how far I'd come from that devastating coffee shop conversation with Ryan, the moment when I'd realized how little I mattered to the person who had been the center of my existence for decades. The pain of that betrayal hadn't vanished, but it had transformed into something unexpected, a catalyst for authentic living that might otherwise have taken decades to achieve, if ever. As we crossed the Hawthorne Bridge, a break in the clouds sent sunlight streaming across the city, illuminating buildings and turning raindrops into momentary diamonds. I lowered my window slightly, breathing in the rain-washed air and the faint scent of river water below. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Thomas commented, catching my eye in the rearview mirror. "Yes," I agreed, watching light dance across the water's surface. "Absolutely beautiful." The autumn wind carried the scent of salt water and pine as I stood on the deck of my Cannon Beach home, watching waves crash against Haystack Rock. 6 months had passed since I'd moved permanently to the coast, leaving behind the sleek downtown condo for this weathered cedar sanctuary perched above the ocean. My morning ritual, coffee at dawn as the tide receded, revealing tide pools and stretches of pristine sand, had become a quiet meditation on resilience and change. Today marked 2 years since my cancer diagnosis, a milestone my oncologist had once presented as an ambitious hope rather than a certainty. Yet here I stood, officially in remission, my body having fought its way back from the brink with determination that still surprised me. The physical scars remained, of course. My energy would never quite reach pre-cancer levels, and certain foods still triggered nausea, ghosts of the chemotherapy that had both poisoned and saved me. But I had made peace with these limitations, recognizing them as badges of survival rather than ongoing punishment. The wind picked up, sending my now shoulder-length silver hair dancing around my face. I'd stopped coloring it after treatment, embracing the striking shade that had emerged during recovery. This simple decision symbolized a broader shift in my self-perception. I no longer felt compelled to disguise or apologize for my age, my experiences, my authentic self. My phone chimed with a text message, interrupting my reflection. Andrea had sent a photo of her son Trev, now healthy and vibrant, starting his first day of kindergarten. The image of his gap-toothed smile, backpack nearly as large as his small frame, brought tears to my eyes. His recovery from leukemia had been one of the first miracles funded by the Winters Foundation, a tangible reminder that William's generosity continued to ripple outward through my stewardship. The foundation had grown beyond my initial vision, now supporting dozens of healthcare workers annually through medical crises, educational advancement, and financial emergencies. What had begun as a personal mission had evolved into a community of mutual support, with former recipients often becoming volunteers and advocates. The monthly gatherings at Pacific Northwest Medical Center had transformed from formal presentations into something closer to family reunions, with shared meals, resource exchanges, and genuine connections forming across hospital departments and specialties. I was preparing lunch when the landline rang, the number I shared only with a select few people. Dr. Chen's voice greeted me warmly. "Valerie, how are you feeling on this milestone day?" "Reflective," I admitted, smiling at her characteristic directness. Our relationship had evolved from doctor-patient to genuine friendship, strengthened by shared experiences and mutual respect. But grateful, incredibly grateful. As you should be. Your latest scans were textbook perfect. She paused briefly. Actually, I'm calling with some news. Remember that research protocol you participated in during your treatment? The one targeting your specific genetic markers? Of course. Those were the experimental drugs you added to my standard regimen. The results from the full trial just came in. 87% improved response rate compared to standard treatment alone. The FDA is fast-tracking approval based on the data. Her voice filled with rare emotion. Valerie, the protocol you helped pioneer is going to save thousands of lives. The significance of her words washed over me like the tide below my home. Powerful, cleansing, transformative. My illness, with all its pain and fear, had contributed to something larger than myself. The cancer that had threatened to end my story had instead become a chapter in a much broader narrative of healing and hope. That's extraordinary, I managed finally. There's more, Dr. Chen continued. The research team would like to name the protocol after you, the Winters method. They're presenting the findings at the Oncology Summit next month and would like you to attend as their guest of honor. Guest of honor. The phrase struck me as almost comically incongruous with how I'd viewed myself for most of my life. The quiet nurse, the sacrificing mother, the invisible caregiver. Yet here was another invitation to step forward, to claim space, to acknowledge the value of my contribution. I'd be honored, I said simply. After ending the call, I returned to the deck, gazing out at the horizon where ocean met sky in a seamless band of blue. The vastness always provided perspective, reminding me of my small but significant place in the universe. Today, that reminder carried particular resonance as I contemplated how circumstances that had once seemed solely tragic had yielded unexpected gifts. The beach below was dotted with families enjoying the unseasonably warm weather. Children, building sandcastles, parents reading beneath colorful umbrellas, elderly couples walking hand in hand along the waterline. Among them, I spotted a familiar figure, a young woman with a toddler, both with unmistakable Thompson features. Megan and little Emma, my daughter-in-law and granddaughter. Their appearance wasn't entirely unexpected. After Emma's birth, Megan had reached out independently, sending photos and tentative text messages that gradually evolved into more substantive communication. Unlike Ryan, whose interactions remained transactional despite the veneer of reconciliation, Megan seemed genuinely interested in maintaining some connection between Emma and her grandmother. Our arrangement was unconventional but functional. Every few months, Megan would bring Emma to Cannon Beach for a weekend, staying at a nearby hotel while facilitating brief visits. Ryan remained in Seattle, creating excuses about work obligations that we all recognized as the face-saving devices they were. I never pushed for more involvement than he was willing to give, having finally accepted that our relationship would never match the one I had imagined during those years of sacrifice. I waved from the deck, watching as Megan spotted me and pointed upward, helping Emma locate her grandmother on the cliff above. The little girl's enthusiastic wave and bright smile pierced straight to my heart, a love unencumbered by history or expectation. Later, as we collected shells along the shoreline, Emma's small hand trustingly in mine, I reflected on the strange circular nature of life. Here was another child to love, another generation to nurture, but under vastly different circumstances than I had experienced with Ryan. I was no longer the desperate young mother scraping to provide necessities, no longer defining my worth solely through what I could give or sacrifice. Instead, I was simply Valerie, a woman with experiences to share, wisdom to offer, and boundaries firmly in place. "Grammy, look!" Emma's excited voice drew my attention to a perfect sand dollar she had discovered at the water's edge. "It's a treasure." "It certainly is," I agreed, kneeling beside her to examine the delicate specimen. "And you know what's special about sand dollars? The ones we find on the beach are just the skeletons. When they're alive, They're covered with tiny purple spines that help them move through the sand. Her eyes widened with wonder. They're alive and purple? They are. Just because something looks plain on the outside doesn't mean it isn't extraordinary. I helped her rinse the sand dollar in a tide pool. Sometimes the most remarkable things are hiding in plain sight. Emma carefully placed her treasure in the collection bucket, already focused on the next discovery. But Megan, who had been listening nearby, met my gaze with unexpected understanding. "That's true of people too, isn't it?" she said quietly. "We miss so much when we only see surfaces." The comment surprised me, an insight I wouldn't have expected from the polished, status-conscious woman who had once dismissed me as irrelevant. Perhaps Megan, too, was evolving beyond the limitations of her earlier perspectives. "Yes," I agreed. "Though sometimes it takes a significant disruption to reveal what lies beneath." The remainder of their visit passed pleasantly, with a picnic on the beach, followed by hot chocolate on my deck as the afternoon cooled. When they departed, Emma's goodbye hug was fierce and genuine, Megan's more reserved but sincere. I watched their car disappear down the winding coastal road, feeling contentment rather than the melancholy that once accompanied such partings. That evening, I built a fire in the stone hearth and settled into my favorite reading chair, William's letter, now framed, hanging on the wall nearby. His words about thriving rather than merely surviving had become a personal manifesto, guiding my choices as I crafted this unexpected third act of my life. Beyond the windows, stars emerged in the darkening sky, reflecting on the water below. On clear nights like this, the observatory would provide spectacular viewing. But tonight, I preferred the main floor, wrapped in the warmth of the home I had created for myself. My phone chimed with an evening text from Dr. Martinez. "Thinking of you on this anniversary. How are you marking the occasion?" I smiled at her continuing care, typing back, watching stars over the ocean. "Making peace with the past, embracing the present." Her response came quickly. "Sounds exactly right. Here's to many more starry nights. Many more nights, many more dawns, many more opportunities to witness beauty, to offer compassion, to experience joy." These were the gifts my illness had inadvertently bestowed, not just additional time, but enhanced appreciation for every moment that remained. The fire crackled soothingly as I gazed out at the moonlit ocean, silver light creating a pathway across the dark water. 2 years ago, I had stood at what seemed like an ending, abandoned by my son, facing a deadly disease, uncertain of survival itself. Yet that apparent conclusion had instead been a beginning, opening a door to a life more authentic and fulfilling than anything I had previously imagined possible. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.